Might as well tell this other story. When I was in Erin, Ontario, it's a very small community, and one of my clients was part of a swingers group, and she's very proud to be part of a swingers group. I'm not saying anything untoward, letting people know it would be probably one of the very first things out of her mouth if she meets you for the first time. Her and her husband, they'd been married a long time together, and they were both swingers, and it seemed to work very, very well for them. But not everybody in a salon is prepared for that kind of openness. Nothing bothers me. There's no conversations people can say that are going to bother me as a topic, even if I have a specific stance on that topic. The discussion of the topic will never bother me. We were taught in hairdressing school, you do not talk about sex, religion, or politics. Almost every customer I've ever had in my chair, at some point, if they were around long enough, we discuss sex, religion, and politics. But it's not a debate, it's more like I would express my observations, they express their observations on things, we have a little discussion on the similarities and differences that we might have noticed about things, but it's not personal. I'm not really talking about personal things for me on the topic, or they're not talking about personal things for them. We're just talking in general about topics and issues. And I know that if something gets heated, you just move to a different topic, something that's not going to be problematic. And that rarely happens. If everybody's going into it being respectful, those kind of situations don't really occur. That has been my observation. Other people may have observed different things. That's my observation in my life in these situations. So I have no qualms talking about any topic under the sun. You know, if it's something to talk about, it's something to talk about. And awareness and knowledge is how we end up changing our minds. And I know for myself that I want all the possible information on things so that I'm making the right decisions about any topic. And the only way I get that is to hear information I don't currently have. And you don't get that from listening to people who already agree with you. You just don't. So, you know, in order to have a critical thinking mind, you absolutely have to have discussions with people that have information or beliefs that are different than your own. And that does not mean that you have to just agree with them, but you have to hear them. You have to try and understand them. And some people, their arguments make no sense. Like, I will never understand flat earthers, or a lot of the people that support Donald Trump. I will never, but I try. Every time I'm hearing this, I'm trying, going, okay, am I going to get the information that makes this make sense to me now? I just haven't got it yet. But I keep hoping there's something there that I am missing, so I don't have to think that there's that many people in the world that are so potentially harmful to themselves and other people. It's just too much. It's bad enough when you have a random 9/11 or a random school issue. I don't even really want to be talking about those. I think topics like that are very, very important. Gun control is a topic that's very important. It doesn't matter what side you're on, but if you're suddenly going, I'm taking my stand and I'm just going to fight for this right, you've already lost. Because if you had the strength of your convictions, you'd be able to hold up to conversations about that without it being a war. It's not a war on guns. It's not a war on Christmas. It's not a war on religion. But if you think it is, then that tells me that you don't think your position is as strong as you are pretending that it is. That's all that tells me. Because every time I know or believe that I am absolutely correct, I have no problem talking about that subject with people. And it's not that I have to convince anybody. I'm not trying to convince anybody else to believe what I believe. I believe what I believe for reasons. All the information at my disposal tells me why I believe what I believe about any topic. And other people that are trying to convince me that I'm wrong or that they are right, as opposed to just conveying the information that would prove that, does not have the same strength of conviction that I do. Because if they did, we would be able to have that discussion and they would agree, well, are you aware of this bit of that information? And I'd be like going, yes, I am. And I feel this way still because of this. And they'd go, oh, okay. Now there's also this information and this can change that. And I'd be like, okay, I will take that in. Does that change that? Yes or no? And things will happen from that discourse that will either confirm what I already know to be correct or bring doubt to what I currently believe is correct, to which I have now more information to go look up, think through. I still might come to the same conclusion by the time I get all that information. Or maybe now I've changed my mind and I see things differently because I am smarter now than I was when I originally made my determination as to what is fact and what is not. Open-mindedness is really important, and it is such a hard, difficult thing to do, but it's necessary. If we're going to solve problems of any kind, it's necessary. But this, getting back to my swinger in Erin, she used to come in and get her hair set for these fancy balls. I used to love doing that because they'd have a theme and she'd have some kind of costuming, and sometimes she'd be wearing the costuming and have to put a cover over it because they're not designed for public consumption necessarily. But she would come in sometimes, very, very modest, fully covered in a long wool skirt going right down to the ankles. But she'd be sitting under the hairdryer with rollers in her hair and everything, getting really hot, and she'd be grabbing that skirt and she'd be lifting it up in the air and fanning to get air into there. And she's not wearing a stitch underneath that. I never got to see any of that. I got to see her sort of fan herself a bit. And after doing her hair for, several months, she'd been coming in and, probably once every week or two for months. And again, lovely woman, absolutely lovely woman. I love talking with her and everything else, but it was problematic to the other customers in the salon who had elderly people who would be offended by her, or there'd be children in there, and she's not really thinking about it. She's just, very in her own world about stuff. But, she'd wear things that were appropriate, but then she'd act in a way that made it less appropriate. And I had to have conversations with her saying that I'm okay with this. And if she wanted to take me to do her hair in her house or something, but then I don't have the equipment, I don't have like the hood dryer and all of this stuff, so there'd be limitations. She wouldn't get the same kind of service in the salon. I prefer doing sets and that under a hood dryer with the rollers and that because they last better, they turn out better. I can do them in a variety of ways. I've done hair on the street randomly for fundraising events, where I have like a little generator that I'll plug curling irons into in a blow dryer, and we'll wet people's hair down and style it out on the street. And of course that attracts more people going, hey, what's going on over there? And we'd have this cycle of people going in because not everybody wants their hair cut for charity. You might get your hair blow dried or curled or something for charity. And so I used to do things like that frequently. And I've worked in a lot of adverse conditions. I do hair for theater. A lot of times you have to give the illusion that it's something that's really set and everything, but you might have to change that hairstyle in a matter of seconds when they come off stage. So you can't put a ton of back combing. You have to do things with pieces, wigs, illusions. Like I would clip people's hair up over like a little fake piece in here, so it looked really elaborate and it looked like it had all the back combing, but it didn't. So that you could just take it down and then they'd have their hair down and you could brush it out and style into whatever they had to before they went on stage next. So there's a lot of differences that regular hairstylists don't necessarily get to experience that I fortunately did. And I will go out of my way to find challenges to do when it comes to proving my ability to do hair. And sometimes things happen accidentally. Again, in Erin, we had a women's side and a men's side. We had a separate barber shop. The door from both of them went into a common staff area. That was like our little kitchen area. So you could go through the kitchen area and go out from one salon to the next. And sometimes we would work as barbers and sometimes we worked as hairstylists. and you didn't run back and forth too much. Eventually we did, but we were trying to keep them too separate. So like one day you'd be working here, one day you'd be working here, and we'd take turns because we all had licenses. You have to have a separate license to do barbering services that are beyond just the haircuts. So, I'm licensed, I do shaves and all of those things. And there was another girl who was also licensed as a barber, but not, especially in small towns. Some clients only want a man barber. Some young men liked having a woman barber, right? It was just a transitional thing from one way of thinking to a newer way of thinking. Now, I hope barbershops are making a comeback because they were really fading out for quite a while. There's something about the barbering services of the shaves and everything else that it's not the same when you're just doing it yourself. It's something about pampering, and women have a lot of options for services that are pampering. Men have just as many, but societal restrictions, even though I don't follow such things myself, do affect what things some men will choose to do and think is acceptable for them to do or not. And the shaving and those kind of things are a pampering that a man should do for himself every once in a while. I used to save up because there was a pricey place that used to do the real full service, because you'll get a variety. But the proper thing is you go and you get the warm, moist towels and the facial manipulations and the massage. And I don't know why, but women's massages, up. Men's massages, down. I don't see the difference, because if this is meant to keep everything up, well, why wouldn't you do that with men too? Like, the difference is weird. But then again, pointlessly gendered. So, this barbering side I was working in, and it had no windows. It was a windowless environment. Like, it had the door to come in that was solid, and that was by design because men did not want to be on display. Nowadays, you'll just see, you can look into barbershops and everything, but they used to be a little bit more discreet. Like, we had the barber pole outside, like the spinning barber pole, which, if people don't know what that's all about, it's blood and bandages. Because back at the beginning, we were barber dentists. You went to your barber for a tooth pulling or a haircut. I don't know why. That's how that developed medically. And then, fortunately, dentistry and hairstyling became two separate things, because I just find that's a weird combination. Because I think it's weird enough with people when we used to go to, or they used to come to us for ear piercings, because we're not professionals. Like, we have like a little gun thing that we're trained to use to put up, and you mark a dot on the ear, you hope it's lined up, you put it up there and pull a trigger. That's what we're taught to do. Now, there are mistakes that are done with people trying to do things on children that way. I personally refused to do children underneath the age of, well, realistically, I didn't like doing them unless they were like somebody I considered to be more or less a grown-up. But under the age of 12, with parents' consent, I would go, fine, I will pierce your ears. Anything under than that, no, because I'm not sure it's what the child wants. The child may not even know what they want. They might want it because they see somebody with it going, yeah, I want what they have. But not necessarily really understanding you are getting a hole in your skin that has a risk of potentially getting infected because it's not meant to be there. It's just a fashion statement. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think I have piercings. I've had 4 here, 1 here, and 1 up in here. I have 2 over here. And the first one I did myself with a darning needle and a potato. We don't all do things the right way. You learn things the hard way. I have a lot of good information because I learned things a hard way. I know what the mistakes are firsthand. And I remember putting the potato behind my ear and taking the darning needle and just, And I intended and absolutely had to get 2 earrings because my father specifically told me, no son of mine is going to get an earring. And I went, okay, I'm not getting an earring. I am getting 2 earrings. Semantics. From the time I was a child, I've been a big fan of malicious compliance when it comes to rebellion. But that's the thing. I absolutely had to, for my own reason, had to get 2 piercings. Well, I'm trying to do, I was going to do 2 on this side, and the ear was swelling, so I couldn't do 2 on this side. So I had to do this side. So I'm reversing using my less good hand, although it used to be my dominant hand until they slapped it out of me when I was a child. That's another story for another day. And now I'm not left-handed. I'm not specifically right-handed. I'm mostly right-handed. But I'm not ambidextrous, but some things I have to do left-handed, some things I have to do right-handed. It's a right mess because people just mess me over. I was just meant to be left-handed, I think. But anyway, when I went to try and put it through, because I'd already experienced this, I couldn't bring myself to put this through. So I had to get somebody else to shove that needle through my ear. The holes weren't lined up. Everything was a disaster. But I had the earrings in. My father didn't even notice for 2 weeks. And when he finally noticed, he acted like I just did it that day. And I tried to tell him, like, I've already had them. I had them for like 2 weeks. He didn't even notice. And he goes, oh, I would have noticed. And my mom, who rarely went against my dad for anything, said, no, he had those 2 weeks ago. And my dad turned to her and said, like, well, why didn't you say something? She goes, I figured you knew. Why would I bring it up if, like, they were obvious? So my dad was a little upset about that, but, you know, that was the one and only time it was mentioned. I went through a lot more. There was a phase when we were growing rat tails braided down the back center. It was just a hideous, stupid thing to do, but it was a trend that went around. And I remember my dad coming up to me and just every time he passed by, he'd look at it going, is there an asshole under there? Yep, there it is. My dad's kind of way of pointing out that he thinks something is stupid. I don't really care. He did plenty of stupid things himself. He didn't see them as stupid because he was a grown-up, but you know, when you're a kid, you're looking like, yeah, that's still stupid. You know what stupid is. Even when you're doing things as a child knowing it's stupid, you know it's stupid. It doesn't stop you from doing it because that's what children do. Adults will do that too, knowing that it's stupid. And I think that's much more stupid. I've got to find a different word than stupid. Because it's not always like a lack of intelligence. Sometimes I think of it that way when I see things, but sometimes people are naive. But I still have digressed enough from my story that I did not finish. So in this dark, dark barbershop area, I am doing a haircut. And I'm almost halfway done this haircut. And the power for the whole township gone. And we're waiting a bit going, is the power going to come back on? Here's a person, and he had fairly long hair. He was going to fairly short, tidy hair because he didn't get it done very often. So sometimes people just come in like once every 3 months, once every 6 months. You know, they'll do like a, let's take it all down, let it all grow back in. Let's take it all down, let it all grow. So he's kind of one of those. And so he was in his let's take it all down stage. And so I get halfway done taking it all down. Can't leave it that way. It's just ridiculous. Half a haircut when it's that dramatic. I tried a little trim, you know, who knows? You know, style it differently, you can get by. But this was beyond just kind of combing it a different way. And somebody found a candle. We had no flashlights. We had no anything in that salon. We got very prepared afterwards for emergencies, brought in like storm lanterns, you know, you name it. We got prepared. But this never occurred to any of us until it happened, that this would be the situation. If the power went out, this is what we'd be dealing with. And every time somebody held the candle, the candle's flickering, making shadows, not the easiest way to do it. And they couldn't hold the candle in front of me for me to work. So the light is behind me. So I'm casting shadows on this too. And basically I did the haircut going by feel. I had to go in and I felt the hair, and I'm like going, God, this must be what it's like if you're a blind person doing a haircut. And I'd already had the skill. I knew what I was doing. I had no idea whether it was going to work or how it was going to turn out, or it was just nerve-wracking, but I thought, I've got to do something. I can't imagine that trimming it up that way is going to make it worse than it is if I just left it as half a haircut. So I finished the work. It took me quite a while because I was being very careful. I think it took an extra 40 minutes, and I probably would have done the whole haircut in less than 15. And that's just taking my time and chatting, right? Some haircuts, you can do in your sleep with your eyes closed, and I kind of proved that I could. I just didn't think I would ever have to. But when it was done, he paid in cash, gave me a good tip, and he left. And I said, come back when this is done, like we can tidy this up and make sure it's right and everything else. He came back in a few days later and he said, no, it's great. I don't want to tamper with it. So I went, fine, we'll deal with anything as it comes up, as it grows out. I've had so many unique, weird experiences that I know no other hairstylist that I've ever spoken to has ever had. And pretty much every hairstylist will have that. We will all have had something that is unique to us that nobody else will have had experience with. I had somebody steal a haircut. I think other people may have had that before, but I haven't found one yet, where somebody came in and I was closing up, but they really needed to be done, and that should have been my first red flag. But I am the kind of person that's like, you don't turn people away. If you're there and it's something you can do, you do it, right? I've worked in places where you can't because you have to be closed. Like if you're in a mall, you have to be open and you have to be closed at very specific times. And when you're in, your own sort of brick and mortar place, you're flexible. If you want to do haircuts in the middle of the night, you can technically do haircuts in the middle of the night. So I decided to stay and do her hair. So we washed it, and she enjoyed that experience, or so she said. She was very nice and kind. We were doing the haircut, and she was like looking, she goes, oh my gosh, I have never, ever had such a good haircut. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, this is good. We went to style it up, and different people have different ways of doing things. I myself like minimal product. I want just enough product to hold and do its thing. Anything more than that is putting too much weight in the hair, and it runs the risk of that alone pulling the hairstyle out. That is how it works for me, and if I'm going to guarantee my work, I'm doing things the way I know I can guarantee the work. And she said, no, I want this, and I need my gel, and I need mousse, and I'm like going, that's just too much weight in the hair. You're not going to be able to style it up. It's not going to stay. It's just going to be this mass of hard crunchiness. It did not match the type of look she was going for. There are times that would be exactly what you'd want to do for certain molded looks that you want to keep a wet look to and have like finger waves. And there's reasons that you would do those. This particular style that she wanted required very little product. So I was doing that, and all she did was complain along the way, and I just did what she wanted. I said, like, fine, you want this in? I will put this in. And I did, against my better judgment. So she finally said, no, never mind. I don't like that. I said, fine, I'm leaving. And I was like, cool, I'll just ring up the haircut. And I go up to the front to the cash and go to ring it up, and she goes back to grab her coat, and I figure she's going to come to the cash like everybody else ever has. And she walked right out the door and left. And I was shocked initially, but I immediately went over to the door and I looked down, and I couldn't leave the salon unlocked or anything. I was the only one there. And all I yelled at was like, stop, thief. And I'm thinking, God, like somebody just stole a haircut. Up until that point, I did not even think that was a thing that could happen. But there we go. But I've had entirely too much talking of this, like 40 minutes of something I expected to talk on for 10 minutes. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And until the next time, as always, take care of yourselves and each other.